this for you. What we've talked about today is all the scoring zone stuff, how to choose the right club, how to shorten the swing properly, how to grip down the way that you're going to allow yourself to be aggressive in these short areas, create some spin on shots. We've talked about the quadrants, how to leave yourself the easiest putts, and to understand that there's a relationship in this area between what you're doing with your wedges and what you're doing with your putting. Because when you start looking at how can I make more putts, you've got to leave yourself easiest putts. And so that's what we've talked about. And now what I want to talk about is chipping, just standard, straightforward chipping. So what we've got here is we've got just a little shot, maybe 6 or 7 feet of fringe to work with, and then I've got another, I don't know, maybe 20 feet of green to work with. Now, when we're hitting a standard chip shot, and I've got a 9-iron here, so many of you are inconsistent with what you're doing with your ball position and in your address position. And the reason why you need to be absolutely spot on here is because there's a predictability that you can have with how far the ball will carry and then how far it will roll. So when we get set up, and we talked about this earlier in the show, about taking the back toe and pointing it to the ball. I want the back toe to point to the ball. Every time you do that, that's going to allow you to have the consistent ball position. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the shaft position. What I want with this shaft is pointing right towards the hip. So when we set up with the toe pointing to the ball and the shaft to the hip, what I'm doing is I'm impacting the ball with the exact same amount of loft on it every single time. And when we start to do that, what ends up happening is that we have some degree of predictability in how far the ball is going to fly in the air and how far the ball is going to roll on the ground. So, toe to the ball, shaft to the hip, and then we hit the shot. Now what happens is that if we start shifting our weight and we start flipping our hands, we start changing the loft, and that changes how far the ball is going to fly and how far it's going to roll. And what I want you to understand is that we need to be very consistent with how the club is impacting that ball. So one of my favorite drills, getting set up, is to just hit a shot with the trail hand, just that one hand on the club. And when we start to do that, we're going to start to get some push with that trail arm. That's going to take us away from the flip. Once we start flipping, that's when we start adding loft. So what I want to do is I want to get used to feeling that palm, the trail palm, pushing through that shot, just like that. And as we start to get comfortable with that, what we're going to start to get a feeling of is that the club is following instead of leading. So when we lead, this looks like this. And that's when our body starts working back and away to accommodate the backward motion of the grip. And what we want to make sure of is that the grip isn't moving backwards, that the grip is staying forward just like that. And as we start to do that, the club's going to start to track out. And you can see, by the way, as I'm doing all this, look at how consistent my shots are. And I'm just talking. And so what's happening is that I've done this enough to where I can create some consistency, and I'm also very aware of what I'm doing with my ball position. That's always in that spot. If I move that up into that spot right there and then hit this shot, that ball's going to fly out a lot farther, and it might not roll as far, it might roll farther. It's inconsistent. And what we want to do is we want to be very consistent because, again, we're responsible for not just the direction, but the distance. And when we're hitting chip shots, we're responsible for the distance that the ball flies in the air and then the distance that it travels along the ground. So we've got two distances that we have to pay attention to. So, toe to the ball, shaft to the hip, weight distribution is up on that lead side like 80-some-odd%. And then what we're doing when we execute the shot is we're really feeling that the shoulders are moving. The body is hitting that just like a putt. Now, one of the things that you can do to assist yourself if you get a little bit tentative is to hold this like a putter. And when we hold it like a putter, I want you to get just a little bit closer to the ball. It's going to be the exact same thing, but the shaft is going to be a little bit taller. The toe's going to be in the ground. And when we hit that shot, what you're going to find is that shot softer.